fly as fuck but still broke, I can't be mad at it. Mama always said I would be talented. I'm in the gym shooting.
Hello. Finally got my work desk and my work chair set up. This took me like 2 hours to set up, which is crazy. And then the chair, which is an IKEA Marcus, took me like 30 minutes, I want to say. Missing like a keyboard and a mouse and then some like accessories, but this will do for now. I just finished my second week at the startup. Loving it so far. The team is really cool. I'm working directly with the founder. It's quite a small team, but then we'll span across like Asia, Europe, America, and Africa as well, which is kind of crazy to me. The founder, who I'm directly working with, also has 4 exits under his belt, which means he sold his own or helped someone sell their startup 4 times, which is kind of crazy. And that's essentially kind of what I want to do in the future as well. Okay, it was a bit too bright, but this angle is good. So I thought it'd be cool to like share my journey, how I was approaching stuff and how I ended up here. And if you don't know me, I started my career in strategy consulting, quit last year to learn coding, to indie hack, which just means like build out a bunch of startup projects and then choose whichever one that you like the most. Did that, built a few different projects and realized I didn't like coding. So at the start of the year, I was kind of like thinking about joining an actual startup because I heard about the idea of an entrepreneur apprenticeship. I think it's a term coined by Daniel Priestley, but a few other people also talked about it. For example, in Robert Greene's book Mastery, he talks about the ideal apprenticeship, which is something similar. So think about like how Kobe learned under Michael Jordan, how Neymar learned under Messi. But back then, at the start of the year, I've never really properly worked at a startup, so I don't actually know what's the best way to go about, job hunting when startup. Because my experience with job hunting is very much corporate focused. I studied in law school. I recruited for management consulting, which both has like super rigid and super structured sort of like recruitment cycle, if that makes sense. So I was kind of lost. And the first thing I did was to reach out to friends I knew who were working at startups because, they've been there, done that. They've gone into startups and hopefully they enjoy what they're working on. So I did like 5 to 10 different coffee chats just with people that I used to work together in consulting or other people that I used to know from law school who ended up in startup space as well. And this isn't just like networking. And this is to properly understand how they manage to find their job right now, but also like whether they like it, what are some pitfalls that I can maybe avoid. So it was actually super helpful. And then basically I realized a lot of my friends found job through this platform called Jumpstart, which is a platform that matches startups with candidates, but it's probably like one of the best ways actually. Even though I didn't end up going through Jumpstart, spoiler alert, to find good startup opportunity for both like startups that are hiring, but also people that want to get into startup space. How it works is that they basically interview anyone that wants to get into the platform, that wants a job in a startup, and then they pick the best people to then onboard them onto the platform. So basically when a startup then comes knocking, they want to hire someone, anyone that's on the platform are already pre-vetted. They are probably like not some random people that just want a random job. A lot of my friends went through that. I interviewed there, I got in and I got a few interviews, but I realized that I was kind of like applying randomly. I didn't really know exactly what type of startup I want to work in, what industry I want to work in, or even like the startup role that I want to work in. And I think that's something that will be very helpful for you if you want to get into a startup as well. Now the term startup is such a misleading term because a team that has like 2 people can be a startup. A team that has like 50 to 100 people can also be a startup, but those will be 2 extremely different workplaces. So after speaking to a lot of people, I ended up figuring out that I probably want to join a team that's before Series A. Now, Series A is just a fancy term for how much funding or what funding stage the company is at. Now, if I do a quick Google, seed stage funding supports a startup's initial development and market research, while Series A funding is the next step, used for scaling and growing the business after demonstrating product market fit. So Series A is usually large in size, ranging from 2 to 10 million euros. Now, of course, that isn't like a hard rule, but basically I want to work in the places where there isn't already like 50 to 100 people, where I'm basically just joining kind of like another big company. I want a place where I have loads of flexibility, where I can work with a small team, I can see what everyone is doing. And that's already like super important, right? Because if you're applying to startups, a startup can be 5 people and 50 people, and those 2 are very different. And the stuff that you'll be doing inside are also very different, as well as the opportunity that you'll get. So for me, I knew that I want to join a place that have like roughly maybe around 10 people, at the 5 to 10 people mark. And then secondly is industry. This is also really interesting because realistically, there's no like one industry that I really would love to work in. Maybe you can say creator economy, which is anything to do with content creation. I mean, that's pretty obvious given that I'm like literally making content right now. I'm pretty passionate about this space. But other than that, like there's no industry that I'm dying to work in. And so I figured out a way to actually still do this, even if you don't know exactly what industry you want to work in, which is to do it by elimination. Take like a list of industries and then just cross out the ones that you don't want to work in. I know I don't want to work in insurance. I know I don't want to work anything biotech related. I know I don't want to work in anything healthcare related. And I did that and realized I'm only left with a list of like around 5 to 10 different industries, and that already helps a lot in terms of the job hunt process. So at this point, I know kind of the industry I want to work in. I know the stage of the startup / the size of the startup that I want to work in. And then I'm basically left with the last thing, which is what exactly do I want to do inside this startup, right? And essentially I realized that there was 2 things I want to do. Firstly, more sort of generalist founder's associate / chief of staff kind of role, where I basically just work with the founder, doing whatever the founder needs me to do. Now, this type of role can be quite attractive if you still just don't know what you want to work on in a startup, but you just want to join a startup. And to be fair, a lot of people are like that. Half of my friends that are in the startup space are in some sort of founder's associate role where they just do everything. And that's actually quite a fit to my skill set because I'm from management consulting, which in itself is a generalist kind of job that people think about. I can do a bit of data analysis, but I can also be like the coder. I know how to code an app. I'm also pretty good at talking to the camera, doing sales call, cooking up partnerships, doing written content, copywriting. So I can do a bit of everything, but I won't say there's one thing that I'm extremely clearly better at compared to like everything else. So that was the first kind of job that I was looking for. And the second type was actually more growth oriented. Now, growth can mean anything and everything depending on a startup. Say you're the growth person at Uber. Your job will be to grow the business. What does that mean, right? That might mean going out and finding drivers who want to be on your platform, or on the other side, trying to find people to actually download your app and use the Uber app to like call taxi or call an Uber. If you're working at Facebook, this might mean getting more people onto the Facebook website or to use the Facebook app instead of like other social media. Or if you're the growth person at Deliveroo, say, then your job will be to get more people to use the Deliveroo app and to order with your business. Now, the actual job and what you do day to day as a growth person really changes. Say you're the Uber guy, that might mean you need to actually ring up taxi drivers to ask if they want to be on your app. Say if you're selling, I don't know, like a new dieting app, your job might be making content, posting that on TikTok, and then getting people to like see your stuff and then download your app. So it really changes. But I was really interested in doing growth because I think what I learned in the last year is that I don't want to be the guy building the product. I want to be the guy sort of marketing and selling the product. And these were basically 2 types of role that I was looking for when I was starting to apply to startups. And with that criteria in mind, it's already so much easier for me to go out, look at what startups are hiring, and then just like eliminate ones that I know won't be a fit for me. So I started applying to lots of places, and honestly, just like any kind of recruitment that you're doing, like 80% of the time, you're not going to hear back from them because there's just too many people applying for jobs nowadays. And that's the same for me. At the end, I ended up applying to maybe 20, 30 jobs. I interviewed for, I want to say like 5 to 10 places. And then obviously one of them being the startup that I eventually joined. So if you're like in this stage, like don't give up, just keep applying. It's a numbers game. And also whenever possible, if you're joining a startup, the best thing you can do is get a warm intro to the founder, or actually just like cold email the founder, because think about it, they're a startup, there are maybe 5 or 10 people. The founder probably checked his own email. He doesn't have like a VA doing that for him. And so if you can get their email, you can get in front of them, that increases your chances like tenfold in terms of getting an interview. And at this point is February. I've started applying for a few places, started interviewing for a few, and actually quite a few were quite interesting, and I was quite excited with a few of them. And funny enough, I was actually a bit anxious because I feel like it's happening too quickly, and what if there are better jobs out there? But something that my friend told me is that, like job hunting is kind of like flat hunting or looking for a new place to stay. If you see a nice place, it doesn't matter if it's your first day of looking for a place to stay or if it's your like second month trying to find a place to live in. If it's nice, you go for it. You don't kind of like think about, oh, what if there's better out there? Each choice should be considered in a standalone way. And at this point, I was pretty sure that I'll get an offer from one place at least. I think at that point I was doing my second last interview, but like very clearly they just really liked me. Like in every single interview, before we even like finish the call, he'll be like, you're a super great fit, would love to like proceed you to the next round. And when are you free to like do the next round? And from the job description, I also feel like they also really wanted me and I was like a pretty good fit to what they were looking for. So I was already pretty sure that I'll get this job offer, right? And suddenly my friend sort of like hit me up and told me, hey Jason, there's this startup that I used to work for in New York. The founder recently moved to London and he's actually looking for someone to do his growth, which is what I'm looking for. And initially I looked at the job description and it doesn't really sound exactly like what I was looking for. So I told my friend, this is interesting, but not sure if this is exactly what I'm looking for. But basically my friend tried to convince me because he used to work for this guy and he told me like, this is the best boss he's ever had. And my friend has worked in many different places. So that kind of pushed me over the board. I'm like, okay, fine. I'll speak to this guy. Let's see what he's about. Bearing in mind, at this point, I'm like 90% sure I'll get the offer from the other place. And I'm also like 95% sure, even if that one place doesn't work out, there's quite a few interviews that I've lined up that basically I'm not in a place where I'm worried about getting a job. I know I can do it. It's just a matter of what kind of job I ended up getting. I think my friend told me about the opportunity on Monday. I probably sent in my application Monday night. The guy got back to me on like Tuesday to schedule an interview on Wednesday morning in person. I didn't really know what to expect, so I just showed up. We were at this like private members club, super fancy, and we chatted for like 45 minutes to an hour almost. He kept grilling me on like specific things I did. I think he was trying to make sure that I wasn't like bullshitting or like making stuff up, but like it was a really intense interview. But at the end of it, I actually changed my mind on whether this was a good opportunity or not. Because after speaking to him, I realized that the job description was actually kind of off. It wasn't exactly what he was looking for. So that's like another thing that I realized, which is like when applying to startups, they don't have like a dedicated person writing job descriptions. It is probably the founder himself writing the job description. And a lot of the time, think of how busy they are. They probably don't have much time to think about how to like write it the best way. So again, like going back to the point, the best way to like actually understand a job and what you're getting yourself into is to actually speak to the founder. And a lot of the times you realize, unlike traditional corporate job applications, these aren't as one way as they used to be. So I remember when I was interviewing for consulting, the questions are like very much one way. So they'll ask me to introduce myself. They'll ask me why I want to work in this industry, why I want to work in their firm, and tell them a time when I like showed teamwork or something, some situational questions. But interviewing for startup is much more of a two-way conversation. There was even one interview with another startup where they asked me to introduce myself, and then like that was the only question. And then the next like 20 minutes was just them asking me to ask them more questions, which I thought was like really interesting. And after the first interview, I thought this was quite a interesting opportunity, so I proceeded, and then we did our second round. And that was also quite smooth. I did an assignment with them, and then we did our final round, which is with the VC that invested in them, as well as a partner in the startup. And I actually ended up getting the offer for the other place. Wow, that's like another story. They ended up giving me a part-time offer because they thought that the salary that I quoted them was too high. And they told me like they can't really afford it. And at this point, by the time that I've done my final round interview, I got the offer, which is great. And I also actually kind of have the other offer that I told you about earlier as well. And at this point, I was still on the fence with this offer. Because yes, it turned out to be a really good fit, as my friend told me, but there were parts of the package that I wasn't like too excited over. And that leads to my final point. After you get the offer, you should actually try and negotiate the terms. Now again, this is something that's quite mind-blowing to me, because my only real experience with recruitment is recruiting for big consulting companies, and they do it like standardized. They hire like a few dozen people every few months. Every contract is standardized. You get the same pay, same everything. There's no room for like negotiation. But again, thinking about startups, there's like 5 to 10 people in this place. Every contract is like tailor-made for you. They're not hiring 10 people for your position. So there is a lot of room for negotiation. And I'm not just talking about pay, but like the whole package. Do you get any performance bonus? Do you get any sign-on bonus? Do you get any like home office setup budget? Do you get to work from home? So there's tons of stuff you can negotiate. And depending on how you think about it and how you go about it, it can basically turn like a bad deal into a pretty good deal. But you don't want to just say, I want this, I want that. The way you want to approach this is to think about what's in it for the other person as well. So in any negotiation, you want it to be a win-win. You don't want it to be like, you win, they lose, or like they win, you lose. Because you're going to be working with this person, you want to be able to walk away with a deal where both of you are really happy with the result. And that's basically what I did, right? I asked a ton of questions in my final round interview, in my final chat, to really understand sort of what they're looking for in this role. What do they want this person to come in and bring? What's the impact? What's the main priority that they'll be working on? And from that, I negotiated things that I wanted, that's aligned or doesn't hurt what they're looking for. And at the end, the negotiation was pretty smooth. We agreed on a deal, and yeah, that's how I started at my current startup. And you know, it's easy to say like, oh, of course, like it's easy for you because like you have a friend who literally worked with this guy and he can put in a good word for you, which is true. But at the same time, that's kind of how startup works. These are small companies run by a handful of people who are all really busy. There's no like 10 HR people helping them screen through CV and tell them who to interview. And you can see it as a bad thing, but you can see it as a good thing. Because as long as you're willing to hustle your way through, there's so many ways to reach these founders to work at like really exciting startups. So I think that's the first key takeaway from sort of me recruiting for startups. And the second key takeaway is to always decide after you've spoken to the startup or the founder. Because job description in startup often will be very different from what you actually do day to day inside the startup because of how fast startups are changing. So for me, this means rather than thinking through whether I want to be a generalist or someone that focuses on growth, I sort of apply to all of those and then actually figure it out after I've interviewed with the places. Because on top of the industry, the stage, and the size of the company and your role, another really important thing that you often overlook is actually the people that you'll be working day to day. And these are the people that you'll see every single day because in the startup, there's not that many people. So that's for me today. I'll do more updates. Comment down any questions you have, any things that you want to know, any things you want to see me like document. I'll be doing weekly uploads, hopefully. Follow for more and I'll see you next time. Peace.